Every summer, people spend money on sprays and citronella candles that mostly just cover up the smell of a meal to a mosquito, while the real problem sits quietly in a bottle cap, a gutter, or a forgotten bucket on their property, multiplying by the hundreds every week without anyone noticing. Here is the part almost nobody thinks about. A mosquito does not need a pond or a swamp to breed. It only needs a small amount of standing water that sits undisturbed for about a week, because that is roughly how long it takes for a mosquito egg to become an adult in warm weather. An old tire filled with rainwater, a clogged gutter, a plant saucer under a potted flower, a tarp with a low spot that collects water, or even a bottle cap sitting in the grass can all be enough. While you are spraying the yard or lighting candles on the patio, the next generation of mosquitoes could already be developing a few feet away in something you walk past every day. This idea that the water itself is the actual target is not new. One of the most dramatic examples in history comes from the construction of the Panama Canal in the early 1900s. An earlier French attempt to build the canal in the 1880s was devastated by yellow fever and malaria, both spread by mosquitoes, and disease was a major factor in that effort, ultimately collapsing. When the United States took over construction in the early 1900s, a sanitation campaign led by William Gorgas focused specifically on eliminating mosquito breeding grounds, draining swamps, oiling the surfaces of standing water so larvae could not breathe, clearing vegetation, and screening windows and doors on buildings. Within a few years, the mosquito population in the canal zone dropped dramatically, disease rates fell along with it, and construction was able to continue and was eventually completed in the 1910s. The lesson from over a century ago is the same one that applies to your backyard today. You do not win against mosquitoes by fighting the adults you can see. You win by removing the water where the next generation grows up. So the first real step here costs nothing at all, and it is what I would call a mosquito audit of your property. Walk around your yard and look specifically for anything that can hold water for more than a few days. Gutters that do not drain properly are one of the biggest offenders, since they often go unnoticed until you actually look. Plant saucers, the trays underneath potted plants, are another classic spot, because people water their plants regularly, and the saucer underneath quietly refills every time. Old tires, buckets, watering cans left outside, children's toys, tarps covering firewood or equipment, and even small depressions in your yard where rainwater pools after it rains are all potential nurseries. The goal with all of these is simple: dump them out, turn them over, or get rid of them entirely if you do not need them. For something like a tarp, even just tightening it so water cannot collect in a low spot makes a real difference. A few spots get missed even by people who consider themselves thorough. Tree stumps and hollows in older trees can hold water after rain and are easy to walk past. Corrugated drainage pipes along the side of a house often trap small pools along their ridges even when the pipe appears to drain fine. Unused above-ground pools or pool covers on a pool not currently in use can collect water on top of the cover itself, which people often forget to check. Even a wheelbarrow left tipped the wrong way up or a recycling bin without drainage holes can hold enough water for an entire generation of mosquitoes to develop unnoticed for a week. Now, here's where it gets more useful, because not everything that holds water can or should be emptied. Bird baths, ornamental ponds, rain barrels, and livestock water troughs all serve a purpose, and you're not going to dump those out every few days. This is where a product called BTY comes in, and it is genuinely one of the more interesting tools available for this because of how specifically it works. BTI stands for Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis, which is a naturally occurring bacterium found in soil. When mosquito larvae, as well as the larvae of black flies and fungus gnats, ingest it while feeding in water, it produces a protein that disrupts their digestive system and kills them within a day or two. The reason this matters so much is what it does not affect. BTI is registered by the EPA specifically because of how narrow its target range is. It does not harm bees, butterflies, fish, birds, pets, or people, because the protein only becomes active inside the specific gut environment of those particular larvae. This is a completely different approach compared to broad-yard sprays and fogging treatments, which work by killing insects indiscriminately on contact, meaning they do not just kill the mosquitoes resting in your yard, they also kill the bees, ladybugs, and other beneficial insects that happen to be there too. BTI is most commonly sold in the form of small, donut-shaped tablets often called mosquito dunks, or as smaller granules sometimes called mosquito bits. For something like a bird bath or a small ornamental pond, you do not even need a whole dunk. You can break off a small piece, roughly proportional to the size of the water, and it will continue slowly releasing the bacteria for weeks. A single full-size dunk is generally labeled to treat up to about 100 square feet of water surface for around 30 days, which means a bag of several dunks can realistically cover an entire property's worth of bird baths, rain barrels, and ponds for an entire season for just a couple of dollars per container. There is a second old habit worth bringing back alongside this, and it costs absolutely nothing. If you have a bird bath, a pet water bowl left outside, or any small container you refill regularly, simply dumping it out and refilling it with fresh water every few days disrupts the mosquito life cycle before it can complete. Remember, it takes roughly a week for an egg to become a biting adult. If you are emptying and refreshing that water every 3 or 4 days as part of your normal routine, mosquitoes never get the uninterrupted time they need to develop there at all. Farms have done this with livestock troughs for generations, not specifically to fight mosquitoes, but simply to keep water fresh for the animals, and the side effect has always been fewer mosquitoes breeding in those troughs. It is also worth knowing how to confirm whether a container actually has mosquito larvae in it before you treat it, since this turns the process from guesswork into something you can verify. Mosquito larvae appear as small, thin, wriggling shapes that move in a jerky, almost question mark style motion near the surface of standing water, then rest to breathe before diving back down. If you see this movement in a bird bath, a bucket, or a rain barrel, that confirms the water has been sitting long enough for a generation to develop, and it is exactly where B2Y makes the most sense, or where refreshing the water immediately will interrupt things before they go further. Because the egg to adult cycle takes roughly a week, the most effective approach is to turn this audit into a weekly habit rather than a one-time project. Pick a day, maybe the same day you take out the trash or mow the lawn, and use it to quickly check the same handful of spots, gutters, saucers, tarps, and whatever containers tend to collect water on your property. Once you know your problem spots, checking them becomes a 5-minute task, and staying ahead of that weekly cycle is what keeps a yard from ever building up a serious mosquito population in the first place. It is worth being upfront about something here too. Adult mosquito traps, foggers, and yard sprays are not useless, and if you are hosting an event or dealing with a particularly bad evening, they can provide some short-term relief. But if that is the only thing you are doing, you are essentially mowing the lawn while ignoring the fact that the grass seeds are still in the soil. The combination of removing or treating standing water, paired with regularly refreshing the water you cannot remove, addresses the actual source of the problem, which is why people who focus here tend to notice a much bigger drop in mosquito activity within a week or two compared to people who only focus on spraying. If you want to take this further, do the audit this weekend while it is still light out, since it is much easier to spot hidden water sources during the day than at dusk when the mosquitoes themselves are most active. Check again after it rains, because a single afternoon storm can recreate several of these breeding spots overnight, even ones you already dealt with once. And if you have areas of standing water you genuinely cannot eliminate, that is exactly where the BTI dunks or bits should go, since that is the one situation where a small, targeted, be-safe treatment makes the most sense. There is one more old trick involving a common backyard plant that mosquitoes actively avoid landing near, and it works as a nice complement to everything covered here, especially for patios and seating areas. That is exactly what the next video is about, so make sure you are subscribed for that one. Let me know in the comments what kind of water sources you found in your own yard after doing this audit, because some of the most common ones, like gutters and plant saucers, are also the easiest to miss, and your answers will help me cover the spots people overlook most in future videos.